The war in Iran. No matter what happens, the Middle East has already been changed forever. And the geopolitical map of the world has likely already been changed forever. We've brought together compelling voices with different perspectives: the American perspective, the Iranian perspective, the Israeli perspective, the Arab perspective, the Kurdish perspective, the Indian perspective. We have Amir Pars, an Iranian born writer who still has strong ties to his homeland. Ahmed Kuzai, a Bahraini political consultant, writer, and media commentator. Eliana Elyan, a political analyst and advisor based in Israel with a focus on Kurdish-Israeli affairs. And Zahak Tanvir, an India-based Middle East expert and founder of Milli Chronicle Media. Each of our guests is either on the board of directors or board of advisors of the Common Bond Alliance, a new organization that unites the many communities around the world that have been under attack by the same jihadist ideology. Our team includes representatives of so many of these communities: Hindu, Jewish, Iranian, Nigerian Christian, Kurdish, Yazidi, Druze, Coptic, Maronite, Sikh. Our team has Muslims, both Sunni and Shia, both Arab and non-Arab, who support the Abraham Accords and oppose extremism. I'm David Cohen, president of the Common Bond Alliance. We hope you'll support our work to unite the communities targeted by jihadist violence. Please visit commonbondalliance.org or click Donate or Join Us. So many of our Common Bond communities are directly affected by this war. So we brought members of our team together to discuss their different perspectives on this war and what comes after. Some of our guests have been running in and out of bomb shelters for the past several weeks. All of them have strong opinions about this war. So here is our truly global conversation with participants in the US, Europe, Israel, the Persian Gulf, and India. Amir, first and foremost, I pray all of your family and friends back in Iran are safe and remain safe. And by the way, the same goes for all of you, because Ahmed and Eliana are both in the line of fire or have been. And Zahak, I know you have many, many friends who are in the line of fire. So prayers go out for everyone's safety. Amir, let me paraphrase for you a comment that we got on social media for one of our posts from the Common Bond Alliance. This is the only war in history where popular support for a bombing campaign is much higher in the country getting bombed than it is in the country doing the bombing. Do you agree with that sentiment? And how do average Iranians feel about what the US and Israel are doing?
We know that, as a rule of thumb, 90% of the Iranian population are anti this regime. Now, does that mean that they actively support the bombings? That is maybe a stretch. What they will actively support is some form of taking down of the regime. Now, that in itself is an admirable goal. However, practically how that is achieved is a different question, obviously. In Iran, as far as we can tell, they are grateful that their oppressors are finally having some resistance, or finally are being pushed back after 47 years of having their boot on the throats of the Iranian population.
I know you've been in touch with people in Iran, but I know lately with the blackout, it's been hard. Have you been able to remain in some kind of contact with people who are back home?
Very sporadically and very infrequently. It's the only way at the moment people are able to get any communication internationally is by buying the sort of call cards that last for a couple of minutes and they are incredibly expensive. And of course, with the real being at all-time low and inflation being, I believe, beyond Zimbabwean levels, people can't afford to make any calls. And the government has, from my understanding, been very successful in taking down Elon Musk's servers as well. So it's very hard for people to get in touch. And when they do manage to get in touch, the call lasts usually less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm sure people are afraid to be frank uh, because they're afraid of
Certainly, I
losing.
mean, when your time is that limited, the conversation is primarily focused on the well-being of those people and the inner circle of the mutual friends and families that you have. That's all you can focus on. You just simply don't have the time to talk about politics, nor do people want to risk it uh, at
Yeah,
all times. It's very risky to speak out loud, and people are very afraid to do so.
yeah. Well, we just got news that Vice President Vance is flying back from Islamabad without a deal. Not terribly surprised by that, but uh, going back a few days, Amir, when Trump announced the ceasefire, what was your reaction?
I've never been very optimistic about these actions leading to a regime change. And that is primarily because I understand how this regime is built and constructed. This is not a regime like, let's say, North Korea, where there is one head of state and taking him out may open up the floodgates. This regime is so intricate within the Iranian society. And for anyone who may be listening to this or watching this, I highly recommend the report published by UANI and Kasra Arabi, who really details how incredibly embedded this regime is and how sophisticated the embedding is. So for me, the thought of airstrikes against targets leading or even potentially opening up the floodgates, as it were, to a regime change is a pipe dream. That being said, of course, on the other hand, seeing the regime weakened significantly, having its, most importantly, the nuclear arsenal significantly diminished, if not evaporated, as it were, having its air defenses completely destroyed and becoming much less of a threat, primarily to Israel, is always a good thing. So there are, it all depends on how you frame the objective. And I don't think Trump or Rubio or certainly JD Vance, the only word I can think of is incompetent in how they've been positioning their ultimate objective with these with their actions here.
Well, the U.S. administration hasn't explicitly said that regime change is an objective. I mean, they've talked about uh, stopping Iran's nuclear program, its ballistic missile program, its support for proxies. They've not mentioned regime change, although some of the reaction I've heard, and I'd like to hear whether you've heard similar reaction from Iranians, particularly in the diaspora, uh, like yourself, has been that there's optimism about regime change. Is that do you think that's people grasping for hope? I am sure there are different views as to possible outcomes for this war.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree fully with where you've presented the U.S. administration's pronounced objectives, I feel like they've been all over the place. I was listening to Michael Oren, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S., discuss this just the other day, that it's very hard to pinpoint what they claim their objective to be because it's been everywhere. And certainly, if you then add into the equation Trump's truth social commentary on the whole thing, it's just regime change certainly has been mentioned. Help is coming, keep protesting, and all of that. So it's very hard to say. But if we limit the objectives to a weakening of the regime's threat to its neighbors, Israel, and the terror proxies, then certainly it seems that there's been progress made in those areas. Then, if we go to your second part of your question, I do get the sense that if we were to take a survey of the Iranian diaspora and say, are you hopeful that this may lead to regime change? You'd probably get some majority saying yes. However, that is more, as you very correctly phrased it, grasping for hope as opposed to being based on rationality necessarily. I think, rationally speaking, the likelihood that this will lead to regime change is minimal, but certainly the hope is always there.
Looking ahead, maybe with an optimistic view, and no, I understand that you're not expressing optimism, but uh, you have a very energized diaspora, Iranian diaspora. I was at a protest in California where I think 350,000 people showed up, and you know they all chant Javid Shah, right? Long live the Shah or eternal Shah or King. I know you have your own views on that, but what is an outcome that you would like to see if somehow the IRGC regime were able to be deposed?
Yeah, I've never been accused of being an optimist, but if I hope for something, certainly we'll need a period of transition for in my opinion, the best possible outcome would be a constitutional republic. Um, Following the US model, that would be an optimal, feasible outcome. The Javid Shah, I'm quite torn on this because I consider him, the person, Pahlavi, to be a bit of a dilettante. He doesn't have any merits. He's never achieved anything in his entire life. He's never done anything of value. And he only relies on brand recognition. Now, that brand recognition has become a bit of a hagiography lately because, especially by people who there are generations who never actually lived under his father's rule and look back at what Iran under Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was with rose-tinted glasses. So the fact of the matter is that he is currently the only game in town as an alternative. And for that, I believe he is someone that deserves backing, but only as a transitional figure, something that he himself has positioned himself as in the past before all of this mayhem started. But I see no reason why anyone would back him for a permanent leadership role, and certainly not a return to a monarchical leadership. But that's just me expressing my personal opinions. And I know that I'm at odds with probably the majority of the diaspora. The alternative would be a communist, the communist diaspora, of which there's a significant portion, and I'm against anything they are. So
And just to quickly clarify before I'm going to bring Ahmed into the conversation, but to quickly clarify, do you think that most of the people who chant Javid Shah actually want a restoration of the monarchy, or is that like a
yes,
rallying
I
cry, like women, life, freedom, that is getting people, riled up to stand up for change?
again, you're asking me to speculate, but my experience in conversing with these people is that they certainly want a return to the monarchy, because Iran and Persian and the Persian Empire was for thousands of years not just a monarchy, but a very powerful monarchy. We all know the stories of Dariush and Kurosh, Cyrus in English, and Xerxes, and all of those. So the DNA of the Persian history is intertwined with monarchy. So it's all a very romantical view, but that's a view that I don't share because I believe it's not updated for the 21st century. Um, but my impression is that the people who do shout and chant Javid Shah are very much of the view that if we just bring back the monarchy under the Pahlavi dynasty, we will once again be a great nation.
Okay. Well, thanks, Amir. We'll come back to you and we'll get everybody into the mix. Ahmed, of course, you're from Bahrain. You're speaking to us from Bahrain, where the U.S. Fifth Fleet is headquartered. Uh, what has life been like for you and your family there since this war began?
Well, to start with, this has been a strange ride for the past 41 days. Us in the Gulf here, we've never experienced such a thing. We've heard of past wars back into the First and the Second World Wars, and previous to that, of course, we never participated. Although this time we just woke up on a Saturday and we were bombarded. It has been a tough ride. The first week was the hardest, of course, not understanding any sound that's coming from anywhere, but then it has been a learning curve. Initially, it was scary. We didn't understand what it is. Yet then life became normal-ish a little bit, and then we started to figure out our path from there as a community, as a society. Although the government played a very big part when it comes to us getting acquainted with that reality in a very well and stable manner through two major things, which is making sure that we have all the supplies needed ready. And here I'm talking about food products, I'm talking about the flow of electricity and the law as a whole on the island. And then from there, basically, the military making sure they're doing their jobs properly and that the majority of the rockets and drones not hitting us. We have the lowest number of casualties, or the second lowest, with two people as casualties, and that's a good number, but still, we understand this is not the actual war yet, and we hope not to see it, but just like Amir, we are realists and we understand how things work.
When you say this is not the actual war yet, so you are expecting a higher level of intensity in Bahrain itself. Is that what you're saying?
Yes and no. What I meant by that is I understand that whatever was fired at us was the minimum of artillery. And here I'm talking about the smallest of the rockets and the most basics of the drones with no explosion heads on one hand. And as well, for example, it's not like the same quality that are being fired at Israel. Um, I'm expecting personally that after the fail of this uh, negotiation round in Pakistan, if they resume, it will be different this time. And as well, I hope not, but yes. That's what we're expecting. On the other hand, regarding your question, yes, I'm expecting more locally from the proxies. I fear personally, I fear the proxies more than I fear the rockets and the drones. They
Well,
are they pose a bigger threat to any community and society.
Bahrain is a interesting case. It's a Sunni monarchy, and you have a very significant Shia population. And I don't know if you're talking about, well, I guess I don't know if you're, fortunately, I don't think there are proxies located in Bahrain itself,
No,
although
there are.
correct me.
I'll tell you, the Shiites in Bahrain claim to be the majority, and that's not true. I come from a Shiite family myself, and I confirm that we are not. We form about 40 to 45% of the population, which is quite significant. But I mean, the term majority does not apply here. When it comes to the proxies, actually they do. And since the Islamic Revolution occurred in Iran in 79, in 81 there was a staged coup by the same groups, by the proxies that were established ever since. And then from there in the 90s, there was an uprising and instability within the community by the same groups. And then in 2011, amongst the Arab Spring, of course, that exploded. And then even now, when the war erupted, we started seeing smaller groups in villages, and normally that's where the Shia stronghold is. And then you see them welcoming these rockets. And I remember basically one small kid was writing on the wall with a spray paint. Bahrain is blessed with the Iranian rockets, and that was really disturbing.
Well, that's obviously a cause for concern. Well,
Yes.
the late Ayatollah Khamenei, of course, in addition to being the supreme leader of Iran, is a spiritual leader to Shia Muslims, including in Bahrain. So,
Mm.
do you think his assassination uh, has has had a very negative effect for the most of the Shia population there?
That's the mix that got Shia somehow becoming the underdogs in the Middle East, which is the mixing of religion and politics at the same time. So the late Ayatollah Khamenei Sr. Was posing as the head scholar or the grand Ayatollah for all the Shiites. And throughout the years, and as I said, I grew up as a Shia in a Shiite family. That mixture created a vague space and a void between the Shiites and any government there is. Because in Bahrain, for example, we have a Sunni monarch, but in Lebanon, they're mostly, I mean, basically the president is Christian. And almost 100 years ago, it was a Christian majority country. Now that shifted. In Iraq, the same thing. So that's how the proxies work, or this actually module of proxies work, is that they are part and parcel of the community with no problem, but they are Shiite, so they follow a grand Ayatollah. Yet politically, they work underground. And that empowered them over the years and made them something to fear in any community they are planted in. And that's our biggest problem.
Um, I know the Abraham Accords are near and dear to your heart. You've been one of the best proponents for the Abraham Accords, particularly with respect to Bahrain.
Mm.
Uh, How do you think this war is going to affect the momentum for the Abraham Accords? And uh, might it have been different if Iran had not, or the Islamic regime had not chosen to directly attack uh, all of its Arab neighbors?
Uh, that's a complicated matter, but there is a mindset shift that occurred during the war. So before the war or prior to the war, all Arabs, all Muslims around the Middle East, I'm talking, and when I say all, I'm talking about more than 95% of the population, were clearly anti-Israel And even if those who have a problem with Iran, they will say, you know what, we could find a solution one way or another. And then there is the third group who see both as a major threat. When the war started, that narrative changed across the Middle East. And especially here, I'm talking about especially the Gulf. When people started changing let's say, the algorithm, instead of Israel being the public enemy number one, now it's number two. Iran became number one for almost everybody. And that is a good call for the Abraham Accords, right? On the other hand, we can't neglect the fact that even those who see Iran as a more or bigger threat than Israel still see that the cause of this war is Israel more than it's the United States, because there's this kind of narrative here in the region that says it was Netanyahu who tricked Trump to fight the war. So, in case anybody wants to see an advancement of the Abraham Accords the coming months or years, they should understand what's happening and build up on it. If they leave it to happen organically, I don't see anything happen with the Accords, actually. At best, it will be stuck in second gear where it is right now.
Yeah. The narrative you mentioned that's in the region that Netanyahu tricked Trump into joining this war, which of course, which I don't believe and I don't think you believe, but
No, I don't.
I just wanted to remark that it's not just in the Middle East. It's gaining a lot of currency here, sort of in the fever swamps of conspiracy theorists and the woke right and the woke left and others. But uh, it's interesting to hear that that is I'm not surprised that it's a similar narrative in the Middle East. Um, Let me move on to Eliana. You, of course, are also in the line of fire. You're an activist for your Kurdish people, but of course, you're also of Jewish heritage. You're in Israel, and you've been living through this war as well as the other wars, the Gaza war and all of that. What's it been like running in and out of bomb shelters?
So when the war started, it was Saturday early hours. We actually kind of figured already before Shabbat came in on Friday that we should be expecting over Shabbat to be in bomb shelters and to receive missiles. So because it followed like a very similar pattern that we saw in the 12-day war with the statements that were made from the US Embassy in Israel. So we kind of saw it coming and we were expecting it already for a long time. There was all that we heard in Israel, all of the conversation was about when will it happen. It was just a matter of when, not of if. Um, of course, it's difficult. We for 40 days we're going in and out of bomb shelters 5 times, 6 times, 7 times a day, also during the night. And it's mentally very challenging to not be able to get sleep, of course, to wake up at 1 o'clock, then 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock, especially for families with children, with newborns. It's of course quite challenging, and for Israeli society at large. But I will say that still, despite how difficult it is to go through a war like this and to be attacked perpetually over several weeks, that Israelis all were for and are for this war. There is a unity in opinion that is rare for the Jewish people because, the joke goes to Jews three opinions, and um, that is the truth.
We can test
So
that on this call because we have two Jews on this call, but
for sure, we will come up with at least 13 opinions
yeah.
amongst the two of us. But when it came to this war, I mean, first of all, we are li living in a post-October 7th world. We are living here with the trauma of October 7th. Um, and a lot of the illusions that may have existed in the Israeli society don't exist anymore to that level. There's a much more realistic approach to the region that we are living in. There's a much more realistic understanding of what the threats that we are facing are. And myself included, a lot of people will say, especially maybe those of us that are younger that don't yet have families, that this is something that we need to do and that we need to also finish the job, because if it's not us right now, then tomorrow after tomorrow it will be us and our children. So Iran is seen, of course, as an existential threat, and they have made it abundantly clear that they will continue to pose an existential threat. And of course, for Israel, it's not just about the ballistic missiles that we are receiving from Iran, it's Iran's proxies that have been attacking us for decades. So, of course, it's the Lebanon front, the war with Hezbollah is still ongoing. And during this war, we have also been attacked through Iran's proxies.
Yeah, of course. By the way, have the missiles and rockets from Hezbollah continued in the supposed ceasefire? I don't think they ever stopped, or did they?
They have not stopped, which is not surprising because, as Israel, we have said that Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire. So we have continued our operations in Lebanon against Hezbollah, and Hezbollah has responded. But I think regardless, if it had been said that Lebanon was part of the ceasefire, I don't trust Iran's terror proxies to abide by any agreements. So I don't think that the outcome would have been different. So I think it was the first day after the ceasefire. I went out to a comedy show because I needed to laugh a little bit. And in my head, it was, we have a few days of a ceasefire, maybe less than 2 weeks. While we can, let's do something different. And I came back home and I found myself in the shelter. Now, the difference between the missiles that we receive from Iran is that we get a pre-warning. When it's from Hezbollah, we don't receive a pre-warning. So without even looking at the news, of course, we can differentiate between where we are being attacked from.
Yeah. Actually, I saw footage of a Yochai Sponder comedy show. I don't know if that's the one you went to, but I think he actually had to finish his show in the bomb shelter because they had to evacuate. I don't know if you were at that one, but well, let me talk about the Kurds of Iran because you've been a great activist for the Kurdish people, and of course Kurds are, I believe, the second largest ethnic minority in Iran. Uh, can you talk a little about how Kurds have been involved in the fight for Iranian freedom over the last few years?
Kurds have been involved in the fight against the IRGC since the conception of the IRGC, since they came to power. So it's definitely not a fight that is recent. It's also not contingent on whether or not Israel and the US would be in a war with Iran. Of course, Kurds have always been pro-Western and have been partners of the U.S. In the conflicts in the region, and also they have found themselves fighting the same enemies of Israel, because essentially the forces in the Middle East that try to either suppress, oppress, or eradicate the Kurds are the same ones oftentimes that want to see the same for Jews and for Israel. So definitely not a new struggle for the Kurds. But of course, this period specifically, um, a new partnership and an actual partnership was what the Kurds hoped for. Very early on, of course, a coalition was formed in Eastern Kurdistan between five Kurdish political parties. This was on the 22nd of February. And they all kind of united to be able to represent the Kurdish population better, to be able to coordinate better. And this was also to signal to both the US and to Israel that they are indeed partners that are united, because that has also unfortunately been one of the shortcomings of the Kurds, that it's not, we talked about two Jews, three opinions. The same thing can be said about Kurds.
Right.
So, yes, but Trump initially he said it would be wonderful for the Kurds to join in, for Kurds to fight against the IRGC. And then the next day, I believe he said that actually we don't want the Kurds to get involved. They complicate the situation. And there was just not a clear rhetoric around the Kurds, but the Kurds also communicated their needs and their wants to the US, primarily that they would want some kind of security guarantee. Of course, the Kurdish regions have been targeted by the IRGC at higher rates. And when I say the Kurdish regions, I'm not just talking about Eastern Kurdistan, the Kurdish areas in Iran. I'm also talking about the Kurdistan Regional Government of Iraq. And to be the spearhead of a fight against the IRGC without any sort of security guarantees is a recipe for massacre against the Kurds. And for that target to only be renewed and for that target to grow, the target on the Kurds' backs. And the second thing, of course, was political guarantees. Now, the Kurds have their own aspirations. They do share an aspiration with the rest of the Iranian population, and that is dismantling the IRGC, of course, and changing the regime. But they also have long-term aspirations of self-rule. And, within the Kurdish coalition, there are different political parties with different ideologies and leanings. So you have, for example, PAK, the PAK that has consistently been very nationalist, and they want an independent Kurdistan and have very openly said so. Then you have other political parties that, like PEJAK, that has consistently said we want autonomy, we want a democratic Iran, we want maybe a more federal system. And KDPI, which has the legacy of the Mahabat Republic, which was a short-lived independent Kurdish republic supported by the Soviets in the 40s. All of them came together and said, baseline, we want for regime change, we want a democratic Iran, and within the territorial integrity of democratic Iran, we want to have autonomy, a federal solution similar to that of Syria and Rojava, perhaps, or of Iraq and the Kurdistan Regional Government. So that has been the general agreement and approach. However, those things were just not answered by the US, and then the US also Trump did say that they don't want the Kurds to be involved. And just a quick thing, speculation perhaps about the reason. I don't think it is so speculative. I think it's very much related to Erdogan and him not wanting the Kurds to be involved. And Erdogan has made it clear over the years that he would be against Kurdish autonomy anywhere in the world. If Kurds try to set up an independent state in some island in the middle of nowhere, Erdogan would also be opposed to that. And certainly he is opposed to any kind of Kurdish gains in Iran. So I think Erdogan had a big effect on Trump and his approach to the Kurds.
Yeah, no, that certainly was a speculation. In fact, I heard you speculating that in one of your interviews. I want to get Zahak in, but before I do that, I quickly want to go to back to Amir. And you've listened to what Eliana has said. Uh, Quickly speaking for yourself, because I know you have strong independent views, and then also trying to replicate the views of what you think of the majority of the Iranian people think. Um, do you think there'll be a major problem addressing the demands or aspirations, desires of the Kurdish people in a post-IRGC Iran?
Wow, that is that is an incredibly complex question. Um, One data point that gives me some encouragement and maybe hope is, and Eliana, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my novice understanding is that the primary resistance group of the Kurds is the Peshmerga. And if we look at the Peshmerga as a whole, I believe less than 10% of the Iranian Kurds are supporting or members of the Peshmerga. So they don't put their shoulders to that particular wheel. And it's very much aligned with what Eliana has said is that there is a significant desire within the Iranian Kurds to be part of an Iranian movement. But personally, I want a independent Kurdistan, but that's a separate thing. That's a personal view. Uh, it's very hard to speculate on the short, mid, and long term of the Kurdish people and how that may contrast with the wider desires of the Iranian people. My guess is that there is a tension there. That tension may manifest itself into dialogue about compromises and give and take. It's I don't see that tension necessarily boiling to a kinetic conflict, but I'm just speculating as a novice on this particular topic.
Well, I think you warmed Eliana's heart with your personal view of what should be the future of Kurdistan, which I think a lot of us share. A lot of us would like to see an independent Kurdistan. I believe the largest stateless people in the world, and their nationalism, unlike certain other nationalisms, wasn't formed as a negation of other people's nationalisms. It is a positive nationalism with ancient history and culture. Uh, Zahak, you're all the way in India, and you're also a Middle East expert, and you've lived in the Gulf. You have deep ties in the Gulf. But initially, I'm interested in the Indian perspective, which I think there are unique equities here. Uh, Particularly how Pakistan ended up being the mediator between the U.S. and Iran. How did that go over in India?
Thank you so much, David. Before I get into the complete discussion, to Amir, I'm not Zahak from the Shahnameh, okay? So I'm a different Zahak, and being an Indian Zahak, you can say that Indians, we have had very strong relations with Persia, for the past 3,000, 4,000 years, and with Bahrain, especially the Dilmun civilization of Bahrain, Indo-Dilmun civilization, and also India has been hosting the Jewish people for the past 3,000 years. We have the Bani Israel, tribes in Kerala, in Gujarat, in Mumbai. So India has been a very comfortable country for all the, people to come in to have business. And to be very honest, after what recently happened, the Pakistan was given the key to host the Islamabad talks. And after this happened, I could see a lot of Emiratis on X. They were talking about Islamabad talks, and they say that these Islamabad talks failed, miserably failed. And in the past 21 hours, you could see that JD Vance declared that 21 hours of discussions failed, and we could not come to substantial, conclusion. And at the same time, Iranian embassy in Ghana tweeted that, for the demands of US, we have given the big no. And China has been, watching all this episode quietly. And I could see a lot of Emiratis talking about it that Pakistan never mentioned about the Iranian attacks against UAE, against Bahrain, because UAE received almost 48% of the attacks. And Israel received 12% of the Iranian attacks. And Bahrain also received attacks. So Pakistan never mentioned about it. And the most interesting thing here is Iran has been championing about Palestine, and Iran has been talking about Palestine, and all this fuss started because of Palestine. And the interesting thing is, Iran did not close Strait of Hormuz for the sake of Palestine, but when it came on its throat, Iran stopped and used the Strait of Hormuz as a choking point. And in the entire discussion in Islamabad talks, neither Iran nor Pakistan mentioned about Palestine. So this is very clear that Iran has been bullying the nations in the region, and Iran has been bullying UAE, and Iran has been bullying Bahrain as well. Now, from the Indian perspective, if you talk about it, what Indians believe is Pakistan has been chosen as a mediator in haste, and Pakistan has backstabbed United States multiple times. And 2 days ago, you could see that Pakistani Defense Minister Asif Khaja, he said that Israel is the evil on the face of the earth, and he called Israel as a curse on the face of humanity. So these kind of statements were coming officially from the Pakistan establishment and from the Pakistan Defense Minister. And to the contrary, you see that India is a very smart negotiator. You could see that India negotiated with Iran and got 8 vessels out of Strait of Hormuz recently. India has strong relations with Israel. In defense, we make, Scud missiles for Israel. We export missiles to Israel. In fact, we import defense and defense equipments from Israel. And India has good relations with Russia. India has good relations with the US. And India has good relations with Saudi Arabia as well as UAE. When Saudi and Qatar, they got into, that whole thing which happened in 2017, India did not take sides. So India has always been a neutral player on all this. So when it comes to Pakistan, Pakistan hosted Osama bin Laden, and it's a very open secret. Everybody knows about it. Pakistan has been hosting terrorism. And in fact, 2 days ago, Abu Musa Kashmiri, who is the top commander of Lashkar-e-Taiba, he said that US-Iran talks in Pakistan is because of the Pahalgam attacks which happened in India. And he said that this has raised the status of Pakistan in the eyes of United States and Iran, and that's the reason they are coming to Pakistan to do this. So the terrorists, the Islamists, are celebrating this as an achievement, attacking India. And in fact, Rajiv Dogra, in his book Where Border Bleeds, he mentioned the mindset of Pakistan. He said the Pakistani defense minister was, not the current one, the past one. He was asked about what would you do if you have to ask something to God. He said that if God fulfills my wish, if he gives me one bomb in my one hand, another bomb in my second hand, then I would drop one bomb on Delhi and another bomb on Mumbai. So this kind of mindset prevails in Pakistan. So it's very sad and upsetting to see that a country which hosts terrorists, which has Mujahideen, the Mujahideen who always talk about destroying America, Mujahideen who always talk about destroying Israel, Mujahideen who, I mean, when it comes to Arab and Pakistan, they side with one country and they hate the other country. So this kind of country is not even eligible for such kind of mediations.
Yeah, I know there was you had mentioned the UAE, and I think one of the most outspoken commentators from the UAE, Amjad Taha.
Yeah.
I saw his tweet that India, not Pakistan, should have been the mediator. Now, I believe you know Amjad Taha, so my question to you is, did you put him up to that tweet?
Yeah, I did. I retweeted his post, and I fully agree with what Amjad Taha says. Not only Amjad Taha, I saw a couple of other Emiratis as well. They've been talking about it. And to be very honest, Emiratis are very upset. And very interestingly, when Islamabad talks were happening, Indian Foreign Minister was in Abu Dhabi, and he was meeting the Foreign Ministry of UAE, and this is happening simultaneously. So what I see is UAE, India, and Israel are on one side, and I could see Pakistan on the other side. And though Pakistan has been the biggest, receiver of aids from Saudi, UAE, and other Gulf countries, but unfortunately, you see that Pakistan has not defended UAE as it had to defend.
Yeah, Pakistan, I think, upset the Saudis who demanded a repayment of their loan, and sort of their standing was perhaps rescued by the U.S., designating them as the mediator, or it was an interesting series of events.
And the most hilarious thing which happened like 2 days ago was Shehbaz Sharif, he posted the draft tweet which was sent to his office and immediately he corrected it. So it became a, you know, it became joke. I mean the experts were talking about it. Like how could a prime minister of such a country which is hosting peace talks, he could not even edit or tweak the tweet and post it. He just copy pasted the entire tweet with a draft written on top of it.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Um, Iran has had interesting relations with India over the years. India was a major customer of Iranian oil, but over the last few years, India has been cooperative in international sanctions and uh, has reduced those imports maybe down to close to zero or to zero. You would know better than I would. Um, how has Iran's relationship with India changed over the last few years?
Well, after Modi came to power, so Modi government has aligned more with the GCC countries and Israel for defense. But relations with Iran hasn't changed yet because the Shia majority in India. We have like second largest Muslim population on the face of the earth, and majority of them from India. And the Shia population, especially in Lucknow, in Kashmir, and other regions. And Khomeini, by the way, Khomeini was born in India. His mother came to India, and Khomeini was born in India. And for
The
that reason,
original Ayatollah
Khomeini's
Khomeini from the
yeah, yeah, the
Islamic
original, the first one. Yeah,
Revolution.
the
Yeah.
first one. Yeah. So the guy of the 1979. So he was born in India. His mother came to India, and his title is also Hindzadeh, because he was born in India. And a very interesting thing which Indian experts have to notice is that Khamenei, the one who died recently, so Khamenei visited India in 1980, and by 1989, the Kashmir insurgency started. And when the Kashmir insurgency started, the Kashmiri militants or the Kashmiri separatists, they were carrying the photos, the pictures of Ayatollah Khomeini. And this is a very troubling pattern India has witnessed, but India cannot upset the Shia, population because Shias have aligned with the Indian establishment for a very long time. So for that reason, Indian government or Indian establishment doesn't want to upset the Shia population. But you see that there has been a strong alignment with the Shia population of India, with the Iranian leadership. And for that very reason, India maintains strong ties with Iran as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, India's role in all this has been very interesting, and they have been good at balancing good relations with people on supposedly opposite sides of various issues. We only have a few minutes left, and I wish I wish we had more time. Uh, and I had a question I wanted to ask all of you, but in the interest of time, we'll start with Sahak. And if people are able to stay a couple minutes longer and would like to weigh in on this question, feel free. Otherwise, you're free to go. Or if you hear sirens, you're also free to go. But um, Zahak, let me ask you. Do you think that this war has already changed the Middle East irreparably? And and how? And how do you think it's ultimately likely to uh, change the region?
Well, David, to be very honest, yes, this war has changed the entire Middle East pattern, Middle East map, and it is irreparable, especially when Iran used the proxies to destabilize a lot of countries in the Middle East. And in the recent war, it used the weapons and the missiles against some of the very reliable partners in the Middle East. So, in my opinion, I think this war, what Iran has caused, it has caused a very huge damage to the West Asia.
Yeah. Ahmed, What are your thoughts on that?
The damage that basically was caused by this war will change to the Middle East forever. Let's start with how Arab nations are dealing with each other. Uh, we'll start with, for example, how Oman behaved amongst the war. Normally, they are part of the GCC, yet they stayed on the fence when it comes to the war right now. Egypt is another issue for the Gulf. We expected more from them, but we didn't see much happening. During the first 2 weeks, they sided with Iran. Then we're talking about the Arab League. The Arab League itself, I mean, everybody in the Gulf right now is calling for either shut it down or move it to the Gulf because the way it is, or the way as is, it's not functioning. That on one part. On the other hand, the relations between the Gulf and the rest of the Arab states, the relations between the Gulf states, United States of America, the relations between the Gulf with Iran, and we spoke earlier about the Abraham Accords. Definitely, it will change the relations. I'm not sure how it is, positive or negative, with Israel.
Okay. Amir, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I fully agree with both Zahak and Ahmed. Couldn't have said it better. The one thing that I would add to that is that the best thing for me to come out of this war is, first of all, Israel's complete realization that their enemies are not negotiable with. They are facing, and this is a lesson that for the life of me, I don't understand how the US and Britain and such cannot get through their heads that they are not facing an enemy who can be negotiated and compromised and reasoned with, because their enemy is driven by a millenarian theological ambition. And that millenarian theological motivation, ambition, and reasoning is not subject to any form of, let's say, worldly arguments. It cannot be overcome by that. And Israel has, by all accounts, realized this, maybe far too late, but they've now realized that there is no compromise with these people. We cannot give out work visas to 40,000 Gazans to come to Israel and work, and we pay them 40 times more and build an economic relationship and therefore overcome the tension. So my hope is that this realization, this lesson becomes worldwide. And sooner or later, the likes of the US and Britain and Germany and the West, etc., come to that realization as well. And that's the one thing that I'd consider to be the best possible outcome in the near future.
Okay. Before I get to Eliana, I want to quickly clarify if I can, if I'm putting the pieces together of the things you've expressed properly. You did express pessimism of like the current air campaign, if that being sufficient to achieve regime change. But of course, you're very much in favor of regime change. You think it's an imperative. So, do I understand correctly that you think the sort of political red line in the U.S., against putting boots on the ground, you think that's perhaps an impediment to achieving our goals, and that you would like to see ultimately some sort of invasion of Iran that can really result in regime change?
So you're inviting me on to speculate on things I have no expertise on, namely military strategy to
Sure,
achieve
no,
a
that's
regime.
fine. Right.
And it's very hard. If I may plug something that is not mine, the the report that I referred to in the beginning of this call is called Unmasking the Bite, BAYT, inside the Supreme Leader's office, the hidden nerve center of the Islamic Republic, and it's done by UANI, United Against Nuclear Iran. And uh, if you take this report that outlines how the regime is constructed, like a very sophisticated nervous system across every layer and strata of the Iranian society, and then you ask yourself, with that knowledge at hand, how can this system possibly be taken down? The As a novice, as a layman, my guess would be it would be impossible without weaponry at the hands of Iranians who are against the regime, or, as you said, boots on the ground in the form of some allied intervention.
Okay.
That's as far as I'm willing to go, but I have no expertise in this area.
That's fine. And finally, Eliana, of course, was part of two peoples who are very much impacted by what's going on here. Do you agree with your colleagues that the Middle East has been irreparably changed, and how do you see it changing going forward?
Yes, definitely. The Middle East started changing irreparably after October 7th from an Israeli perspective. We've seen Israel go from a defensive strategy or position to a more offensive one in the last couple of years, more and more. Israel historically has fought short wars with neighboring countries. This is a very different, and also has fought wars, of course, with non-state actors, with proxies, with terrorist proxies, and has had its internal problems. This is a new kind of war for Israel as well, what we are seeing with Iran. And in Israel right now, if you listen to people on the news, people in think tanks, different coming from different sides, militarily, academically, from different perspectives, there is a talk about what is next. Now, a lot of the conversation revolves around Turkey as one of the heads of the Muslim Brotherhood, as the person that as the party that has funded the Sunni axis of terror. So I think that this is the beginning of the change in the Middle East. Now, do I think that we will see Israel and Turkey fight a war against each other? I think both Turkey and Israel have a very, very strong interest of avoiding that. Turkey is second largest army of NATO, and of course a NATO member, which in itself makes it different from Iran, which has been a challenge to the entirety of the Middle East, as we have seen recently very clearly. But I want to say that, Israel's definitely shifted its perspective, and it has, I think, maybe come to the realization that when you are peaceful and want to be left alone to live in peace within your own borders, and you don't attack anyone, that doesn't necessarily guarantee you safety in the Middle East. You'll still be attacked, you'll still face enemies and challenges, and sometimes you really have to go out there and take care of these problems and maybe even shape the region so that it isn't an existential threat towards you. But we have also maybe seen, and we will continue to see, to what extent Israel is absolutely dependent on the US. And or is it dependent on the US? Can it act by itself against the very real threats that it faces? And where will this partnership go? So that's from the Israeli perspective. And I think from the Kurdish perspective, of course, there has been very big disappointments in regards to Rojava in Syria with the US recently. What we have seen both in Syria and in Iran is unprecedented unity. A few years ago, if someone had said that 6 Kurdish political parties of Eastern Kurdistan would come together under one coalition, sign agreements, and just agree, period, this would have been a stretch. Now we are seeing that across multiple parts of Kurdistan, and we're also seeing heightened cooperation We saw this with Kurdistan Regional Government and Rojava, Syria. We are seeing it also now with Eastern Kurdistan, Iran. And another unprecedented thing is how openly Kurdish leaders are talking about wanting to collaborate with Israel, about wanting to partner up with Israel. And that is really something that also a few years ago, it was something that we knew as Kurds internally. We knew that, or it was known that Kurdish political parties, some of them are very pro-Israel, some of them less so, but generally speaking, that there's positive feelings towards Israel and towards Jews. Now we are seeing the elite, the leadership, outright say this. And I think this can also definitely change the dynamics. And I think Israel needs to have just a long-term strategy and cooperation with the Kurds, which are significant actors in the Middle East, regardless of being stateless.
No, I appreciate that. And that is a hopeful and optimistic note. Um, for years, people like Amir were telling us, uh, and I sort of believed him, but there was such a reservoir of goodwill in the Iranian people for Jews in Israel, but I thought perhaps it was being oversold by people like Amir and Elika Laban and Goldi Gamari, but I think we've seen in certainly since October 7th, that it's really true. And we've really seen a blossoming of the friendship and partnership between the Iranian people and the Jewish people. And Eliana, I think it's hopefully the relations between the Jewish people and the Kurdish people are on a similar uh, trajectory where I think people are seeing their shared interest and clearer focus. So on that hopeful note, I thank all of you for staying over a little, and mostly I thank all of you for just a very, very intelligent and stimulating conversation. We really need more time to hash this out, but in the short time that we had, all of you made excellent points and have given us all a lot to think about, and we appreciate that very much. So we're going to watch how the situation unfolds, and we're going to pray for the best. We pray for the safety of all of you and your friends and family who are in the region and in the line of fire, and ultimately we'll pray for a future of peace and justice for all parties concerned. So thank you so much. We hope you gained something from that conversation. And we hope you'll support the work of the Common Bond Alliance as we unite the many disparate communities around the world under attack by jihadist extremists. We need to come together, fight propaganda together, fight hate together, amplify one another's stories, stand up for one another, advocate for one another, and together work for a world where the intentional targeting of non-combatants for violence is never acceptable. Please visit our website at commonbondalliance.org and consider donating by clicking Donate and/or joining us by clicking Join Us. Thank you.